Today I'm going to tell you about the 22 dungeon bosses that Jinwoo and his son Suho clapped in solo leveling. I'm also going to answer some questions like, why did Jinwoo fail to extract Baruka's shadow but succeed with Igris? And why was Kamish that strong? Like, bro wiped out hundreds of S-rank hunters like they were ants. Or what could have happened if Jinwoo accepted Leisia's proposal of an alliance? Let's start with the easiest clap ever for Jinwoo, the blue stone golem. Now, if Jinwoo was a few hours late finishing the instance dungeon below Habjeong subway station, this big boy could have broken through the hunters and hurt some civilians and police in the process. But he was taking on an entire group of low-rank hunters during a dungeon break in the middle of the city, and was winning too. The hunters couldn't even break through its defenses, and the mages and healers were running out of mana just keeping up. It was like watching a bunch of kids shoot Nerf guns at a tank.
Heavy Panzer is under infantry attack! Why am I shouting this?
But all it took was a blow to the head from King Kangshik's broken sword, which broke through Golem's defenses, and finally allowed the hunters to take it down. The throw, by the way, had some, Major League Baseball energy. Also, did you know that in the solo leveling Arise game, you can get this boss as Jinwoo's shadow unit? And he has a new name there, Big Rock. Not the most creative name, I guess. Should have asked Blue Lock players to name his shadows. Those guys are creative with names. Here's another easy clap for boss Jinwoo, the Hobgoblin. To think Kang Tae-shik was tougher than this guy. Like, Jinwoo just went in and fed the prisoner to him and the goblins, then dispatched them like mosquitoes on a bug zapper. Meanwhile, Kang Tae-shik killed 2 of the prisoners plus 2 other hunters and went toe-to-toe against Jinwoo. Like, bro deserves to be an A-rank dungeon boss. But like Goblin Slayer taught us, you can never really underestimate the goblins. Jinwoo might be an exception, but if other hunters had a go at it, they'd probably have a hard time. And speaking of having a hard time, the next boss definitely gave his sister, Jinna, a hard time. Grokter, chief of the Red Blade tribe, thought he was going to get away with hunting humans in Jinna's school. I mean, a voice in his head kept telling him and the other orcs to kill the humans. So I guess he was just following orders like a good little boy. But he didn't know that harming Jinna would bring death to him in the form of Sung Jinwoo on top of a shadow wyvern, hurtling through the sky faster than I was when my girlfriend texted me saying, I'm alone at home right now. Like, damn, even I got scared when Jinwoo showed up looking like this. Song Yi saw the murderous intent in his eyes too. And after the homeboy made sure his sister and everyone else were okay, he turned his attention to the insects that caused Jinna's distress and bodied them all with his bare hands.
With my bare hands!
Grokter wasn't totally useless though. He confirmed to Jinwoo that he, and probably all the other monsters, were hearing a voice in their head, telling them to kill people. That at least made it clear to Jinwoo that, like him, they were also receiving instructions from someone, like how he was taking quests from the system. This next boss is tougher than the previous ones. Giant Arachnid, Baruka. Now let's not forget the reason Jinwoo even got stuck in that dungeon. Wang Dong-suk and his little crew of lizards. Bro really thought he could trap Jinwoo with the spider and get away with it. But he was so confident of his big brain scam of leaving teammates for dead and looting their bodies after killing the boss. Nah, my guy got folded after his scam flopped. Honestly though, deserved. But enough about those losers. Let me talk about how tough this C-rank boss is. Even though Blue Venom Fanged Casca was a tougher one that Jinwoo beat before facing this guy, Baruka did manage to hold his own against Jinwoo. As Jinwoo described it, this mutated cousin of Spider-Man had countless eyes and an unsightly mouth, a body as big as a house, and far-reaching legs. But bro can't even intimidate Jinwoo anymore. Compared to the horrors of the Kartanon Temple, this boss was like cake. Its black armor made it quite resistant to physical attacks though, so it took a while for Jinwoo to defeat it. Now here's something you might have missed. Jinwoo's son also fought the same boss. In chapter 24 of Solo Leveling Ragnarok, Jinwoo's son Suho went up against a boss that's basically Buryura's twin. But bro seems to have dealt with it faster than that. Speaking of Suho, he had already met his own share of unique bosses, especially Brocky, the hyena. It was also a surprise to me that Brocky was supposed to be the protector of the descendant of the Fang, if not for the Itarim messing with his mind. At some point before the start of the story, Itarim found Brocky and the descendant of Lord Raken, and stuck one of those concentrated stardusts on his eye, which twisted his desires into something more and made him forget what he was fighting for in the first place. Then, under Itarim's command, they instructed Brocky to capture humans alive and send them over to the organization, which we later found out that they're going to use as firewood to make more stardust. And that's why Suho caught the Hyena Guild straight up kidnapping people. Because not only were they headed by an Itarim-controlled beast, most of their members used to be gangsters too. criminals who didn't play by the rules and are fine with committing crimes on their own turf. They were not exactly tough though. Most of them are D-rank hunters, and Suho wiped the floor with all of them on his own before Brocky showed up. Thankfully, with the help of Descendant of the Fang, Suho became powerful enough to defeat Brocky. Honestly, I can't forget the hype when the combined powers. I mean, look at this. The boy's dripping. But the good thing is the influence of Itarim wore off in his final moments, and Brocky at least remembered the real reason why he wanted to be strong. I guess, in the end, it was Suho who fulfilled Brocky's wish of protecting Rakken and his descendant. Up next is another boss that Sung Suho defeated, this time in a field-type dungeon in Egypt. Now Sheikah, the Tomb Warden, may be a unique boss in Ragnarok, but I can't help but feel like his design was inspired by an Egyptian god. I mean, his armor and headgear has bird-like qualities to it, which makes me think it must have been based on Horus, the falcon-headed warrior god of ancient Egyptians. And bro is no minor god too. Horus is one of the ancient Egypt's most important deities, and was believed to be the god of war and the sky, which is probably why he was the boss of that field-type dungeon, and gave Sung Suho quite a hard time, especially since he was using the sand around them to restrict Suho's movements. Guess Suho understands what Anakin meant now when he said,
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
But defeating Sheikah was the only way he could save his new ally, Ammit. If you remember the massive reptilian creature that was trapped and experimented on by the Monarch of the Iron Body, Tarnak, in this dungeon, and was forced to endure pain and torture for probably several hundred years. And the only way Suho saw that he could free him was if he could collapse the dungeon by defeating the boss itself. The plan worked, kinda, since the stakes were no longer tied to the collapsing dungeon, but the chains were still clinging to Ammit, until Suho had the big brain idea of moving the stakes into a shadow dungeon instead, and that's how you make new friends, my bro. Now back to Daddy. Let's talk about Sung Jinwoo's first real challenge, the blue venom-fanged Kasaka. Considering how weak Jinwoo was at the time, I was actually surprised how he wasn't more hurt after the fight, because Kasaka's tough skills actually broke Jinwoo's sword into two. Well, the sword already took quite a beating with all the steel-fanged lichens and razor-clawed brigas he mowed down, but it's still like trying to mine diamonds in Minecraft with a stone pickaxe, you know? And unlike the centipedes in the penalty dungeon, he had to actually confront and defeat this one, or else he wouldn't become stronger. Your boy realized his own strength though. Like his actual strength stats were so wild now that he crushed the serpent's body with his bare hands. Like a bear hug that would actually scare the bears. And you know what? I guess the saying, like father like son, is true with the Sung family, because Suho did the same thing when he encountered Kasaka. I mean, does his family have beef with spiders and snakes? Honestly. What I love about this boss though, he dropped a sick-ass dagger after dying. Kasaka's Venom Fang became one of Jinwoo's favorite weapons, and they're basically best friends at this point. And this dagger had the honor of putting a hole through the Monarch of Frost himself, after he violated Chairman Gogan-hee. Up next is a boss that looks like the OG Slardar from Dota, the boss Naga. There isn't really much to say about this guy. It's just that he and his underlings seem to be inspired by the Naga creatures of legend. Nagas are said to have long, snake-like bodies, with scales that come in all kinds of colors and patterns. Usually they're about the same height as a regular person, but they can lift themselves up to look even taller with their super long tails. They often do that to freak out their enemies or just to get a better view of what's going on around them. Anyway, after quickly cooking this boss like hot dogs on a Sunday cookout, Jinwoo turned him into a fluffy shadow soldier. I mean, look at him. Doesn't little buddy look so adorable? It was also during this boss fight that Woo Jin-cho saw how Jinwoo basically solos every dungeon with his shadows, from fighting enemies to mining mana stones to collecting corpses and monster materials. Another dungeon boss that could have gotten more attention is the Archlich from the A rank gate in Busan. Now this guy could have probably been an A to S rank boss, and he could have deleted the entire Knights Guild if he had the chance. Like seriously. According to the lore by the Knights Guild leader himself, the Archlich was known for wiping out one of the major Chinese guilds in the past and causing a dungeon break known as the annihilation of the Gold Dragon Guild incident. It took China's best hunter, Liu Zigang, to finally defeat the boss, and they avoided a more catastrophic incident. But Buddy got clapped by Beru really easily. In fact, he didn't even get to meet Sung Jinwoo because during this dungeon raid he had to leave and rescue Jinna. And his Death Knights couldn't even do anything, like they all just dissolved into nothing, like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, when Arya stabby the White Walker King. Speaking of companions who couldn't do anything, the same thing happened to our next boss, the Treefolk Centaur. Bud was also like an S-rank boss because what's supposed to be a B-rank gate suddenly turned red after Jinwoo stepped in. But by now your boy already survived Baruka during the first Red Gate incident, so this boss was easy. This guy's massive though. easily dwarfing Jinwoo with a body that looked like it was made out of wood, and a lower half that seemed like a dragon. He also had a bunch of forest folk and monsters under control in this territory, but like I said, they were all useless against Jinwoo's shadows, and they all eventually joined his army. Jinwoo didn't even have to touch them. Beru, Igris, and Tusk were more than enough to hold him down until he went RIP. But Jinwoo's first taste of an actual high-ranking dungeon came when he opened the gate to the demon's castle and met Cerberus. Now, it's no wonder why this boss shares the same name as the three-headed guardian of the underworld. It's a large, muscular dog with 3 heads and an appetite for us people. The only difference is this version of Cerberus was on fire the whole time. Jinwoo poured everything he had on this boss too. Bro went all out with his attacks, but Cerby just shrugged him off. Like that time when Rimuru transformed into a direwolf and basically ignored attacks like they were the wind or something. Cerberus also had a cheat skill on hand, Rage, which increased his stats twofold and made him invulnerable to pain for 3 minutes. Like someone who took a certain kind of drug or something. Not gonna lie, if Jinwoo didn't level up before facing him, the adventures of the Monarch of Shadows would have ended right there. But this demon's strength gave Jinwoo a sneak peek into what he will be facing in the upper floors of the demon's castle. But before Jinwoo could take on the elites of the demon castle, he found a new friend, Igris, the Red. The most amazing thing about Igris is not his physical prowess, or the fact that he has abilities like the Commander's Touch that allowed him to control his massive sword and let it fly around like a more lethal version of a boomerang, or the fact that he has a sexy-ass blood-red armor that looks like something Porsche would make if they were designing armors. Nope. The most awesome thing about Igris is the fact that he was actually Ashbourne's loyal servant from the very beginning. In chapter 187, Igris revealed in a flashback that he was put in that dungeon on purpose to test out the human that Ashbourne took interest in. What's more amazing was the fact that most of his power was actually sealed away before they fought, but he still almost killed Jinwoo during the job change trial. Igris was so impressed with Jinwoo's determination though, and the way our bro refused to give up in spite of the situation he was in. Ultimately, even though Igris was far superior in skill, he was defeated by Jinwoo. But what touched him the most was Jinwoo's kindness. In Igris' words, there were often times when I was thankful for his kindness. He was my master, my friend, and colleague. Igris became one of Jinwoo's most reliable shadow, and in return Jinwoo became the best friend that Igris never had. Back to the demon castle though. We have the avaricious Vulcan on the 50th floor. Now for someone who looks like a red-skinned lazy couch potato, this boss was surprisingly fast. He was so fast that Jinwoo had to think of more creative ways to fight him, like borrowing Iron's shield to protect himself from Vulcan's club, and using the Commander's Touch skill to move himself in midair to avoid an oncoming attack. Finally, to defeat the Tubby, he had to use the environment itself, luring it to a trap where Jinwoo could restrict its moves and make sure he couldn't avoid Jinwoo's attack. It took a while to defeat the big boy, but it was worth it in the end, because he dropped one of the first ingredients Jinwoo needed to craft the holy water of life, the fragment of the world tree, although he didn't know it at the time. Got some cool items out of this boss too, including the Orb of Avarice, which makes Michael Bay's explosions look like sparklers. But Jinwoo would have found it extra challenging to fight Vulcan if he wasn't able to fight and defeat Baruka before. You might be wondering, why did Jinwoo fail to extract Baruka's shadow, but succeed with Igris? Well, there's 2 reasons I could think of. Bud's just too high level for Jinwoo that RNGesus did not favor him that day. Remember? It was Jinwoo's first time encountering a red gate, so the boss there was bound to be a lot stronger than expected. Baruka also seemed to be under the system's control. At one point while Jinwoo was talking to him, he suddenly glitched out and repeated a previous line, kinda like an NPC. And even though Jinwoo won, he had to be sneaky to defeat Baruka, because taking him head on would have been a one-way trip to RIP land. So when he tried to extract his shadow, well, he wasn't powerful enough to take control of Baruka's shadow yet, and the extraction failed. It's like pulling characters in gacha games, you know? You try to pull a 5-star or an S-rank character, but you're at low pity and you're shit out of luck, so you end up with Ling Yang or Kiki.
I pulled a Chi-Chi.
And 2, Jinwoo was able to talk Igris into it, compared to Baruka. Remember, Jinwoo actually had to convince Igris by giving him a pep talk about letting go of guarding an empty throne, and work for him instead. Which leads me to think that Baruka's shadow, soul, just straight up refused to be Jinwoo's soldier. Brother was probably still bitter about losing to a human. Got a sick-ass dagger out of the incident though. Also a little bit of trivia. In the OG story, Jinwoo was not able to extract Baruka's shadow, but in the solo leveling Rise game, you can get Baruka as a shadow soldier with the name Blades. Next we have the boss at floor 75 of the demon castle, Soul Shepherd Matus. And this guy sucked ass. Like truly, he didn't even get to do anything against Jinwoo. Got straight up dusted in about 2 seconds. But that's no wonder considering Jinwoo became so much stronger after defeating Vulcan. Plus 24 floors worth of demon folk before getting to floor 75 and clapping Meta's bony ass. But that's usually the thing with necromancers though. With our boy Jinwoo being the exception, most necromancers don't have that much capability by themselves. They rely on their soldiers and summoning magic to fight the battles for them. But take out the necromancer and all you're left with are dead, useless corpses. Still, bro wasn't totally trash. He did drop a sick-ass artifact, plus the spring water from the Forest of Echoes. It's also after defeating Metis that Jinwoo finally unlocked the recipe for the Holy Water of Life, the solution to his mother's eternal slumber. This next boss dodged Jinwoo like Floyd Mayweather dodged Manny Pacquiao. But I'm including it in the list because Jinwoo said so. And by saying said so, I meant Jinwoo literally said that the Earth Giant was more powerful than Vulcan or Metis. Like damn, homie be having Demon Castle boss vibes in a regular ass gate. Jinwoo found the Earth Giant the first time he went through an A rank gate, posing as a miner for the Hunters Guild. And according to him, the mana waves emitted by the boss were strong enough to make his body tremble. Like a chihuahua in heat. Yeah, maybe not, or something like that, I don't know. Choi Jong-in and Cha Hae-in, along with other members of the Hunters Guild, had to work together to defeat the boss and close the gate, but not before letting the mining and the recovery team farm the crystals and monster materials from the dungeon. Honestly, Jinwoo could have clapped it solo, if only Cha Hae-in didn't find him before he could do anything. But at least your boy got a whole romantic out of the situation. From romantic vibes to purely a-hole vibes, here's the Orc Shaman Kargalgan. But he had too much confidence in his powers, and honestly he deserved getting folded by Jinwoo. Like he blocked the exit with his powers and poisoned the mages with it, right? Then he convinced the humans to join him in his throne room, only to announce that they're going to be the entertainment for the homies, like some kind of effed up version of the Survivor. Then he proceeds to almost kill the team leader, Son Ki-hoon, by bouncing him around like a ragdoll, before Jinwoo said, alright, y'all are going too far, this was just a sleepover. And bro really thought he could take on the Monarch of Shadows with his spells and hymns like the Hymn of Agony, which curses a target with intense pain, the Hymn of Giants, which he used to grow dramatically in size, something I also wish to do with certain body parts. You know what I'm saying? The Hymn of Lethargy, which petrifies a target in place, the Hymn of Blindness, which obviously blinds a target, and a few more. He also had the Hymn of Protection, which materializes a blue shield around himself. But like, bruh, this ain't Sunday choir. Jesus can't help y'all. Dude was also shook that Jinwoo used his own force against him by bringing the dead orcs back to life. Like bro, you were fighting a necromancer. Did you think he would not use your dead things against you? Even Woo Jin-chul and Cha Hae-in left their jaws on the floor that day when they saw how Jinwoo took care of business. The final disrespect though was his own guards stabbed him to death after they became Sung Jinwoo's shadows, which felt like the highest degree of Mortal Kombat fatality or something. Up next is one of Jinwoo's most unique enemies and eventually ally, the Ant King. Now I don't know about you, but I feel like the Ant King was a sneak peek into how terrifying Jinwoo would be if he was a psycho. Before Jinwoo defeated him, the Ant King almost wiped out every hunter that set foot on Jeju Island. Even the Blade Guild from Japan, who were known as Asia's second largest guild and had 11 S-rank hunters, got dunked on by the Ant King. The Korean hunters were in the same situation too. Everyone was so proud that they managed to beat the Queen Ant, but they didn't know that that was just phase 1 of the boss battle. The Ant King was not only fast and powerful, boy also had 200 IQ moves. The bastard took out the healer, Min Byung-gu, and bodied the other hunters, gravely injuring Cha Hae-in and almost killing Choi Jong-in and Bak Yun-ho. The Ant King could also absorb his opponent's skills by devouring them, like Kirby except more horrifying. Good thing the goat had a shadow guarding Chae-in, and he immediately swooped in to save the day. Can't let anything happen in future Mrs. Sung, you know what I'm saying? And defeating Beru unlocked a shiny new feature in the system. When the Ant King's shadow was distracted and he became Beru, he was the first shadow soldier who could talk and had the rank general. This is where Jinwoo realized he can now level up the rankings of his other shadow units too. So not only did Jinwoo grow stronger by taking Beru, it unlocked a whole new system for his shadow soldiers to get more powerful. Speaking of power, there's another dungeon boss who could have been a powerful ally. If only he wasn't so sus. I'm talking about Leisha, Monarch of the Beginning. Now what do you think could have happened if Jinwoo accepted Leisha's proposal of an alliance? Well, my guess, he probably still would have betrayed Jinwoo and ended up dead all the same. The truth is, I don't really know how powerful Leisha is. Dude was tied up the entire time Jinwoo talked to him. and he never really got out of it before he got skewered like kebabs on a grill. Leija was useful for one thing though. He was one big info dump. Like Buddy spilled the tea first and gave Jinwoo some lore on what was actually going on. He even cast the Pledge of Trust exchange to force both him and Jinwoo to tell the truth. Like Buddy snitched on who he was, what the magic beasts were, and what the hell was actually going on. He even clued in Jinwoo about the upcoming rematch of the Monarchs and the Rulers. But bro got screwed over by his own spell because he couldn't lie about his own mission of killing humans. So Jinwoo made the executive decision to relieve him of his head. Also, he was probably gonna die anyway, since he was a dungeon boss and Jinwoo can't close the massive gate in Shinjuku if he wasn't defeated. But way before Jinwoo bodied Leija, he already rinsed the Demon King Baran, Monarch of the White Flames. And like Jinwoo, the top G of the top floor of the Demon Castle also had some cool tricks up his sleeve. For one, he came in with a badass entrance, riding his own wyvern, Kai'Selen, into battle, like a WWF wrestler. Then he summoned his own army of demons, but he can also shoot lightning from his mouth and hit a huge chunk of Jinwoo's own shadow armor. But good old Tusk pulls off a clutch move and shoots fire from his mouth, hitting Kai'Selen, which dropped Baran to the ground. And a little bit of distraction from Esso from the Raduru clan was all Jinwoo needed to rip Baran's arms off and uppercut his head off his shoulders. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but Jinwoo seems to love Mortal Kombat fatalities. Also, after defeating Baran, he finally got what he came for, the final ingredient of the holy water of life, the purified blood of the Demon King. And RNGesus seemed to be on his side this time because he managed to get 6 vials of holy water of life from all that material. Thanks, RNGesus. Also, he got a sick-ass ride after extracting the wyvern's shadow. Now he uses it to rescue his sister and go on dates with a hyena. Your boy got that date in the sky riz, like Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. Speaking of dragons, here's one of the strongest beasts the hunters have ever faced, the calamity dragon Kamish. Now, if it weren't for the efforts of 5 god-tier hunters, Earth would have been a wasteland by now. Cause when the first ever S-rank gate pops up in the US, guess who stepped out? This guy. And this dragon was not in the mood to chill. He straight up wrecked the west coast, wiping out hundreds of S-rank hunters like they were ants. And he was the bug exterminator. The chaos finally ended when the last 5 S-rank hunters teamed up and somehow took him down in one of the craziest fights the world ever saw. And when you take down such a legendary boss, well, you've got to have some amazing loot from it. After the fight, the US government kept Kamish's body exactly how it was when he died. They built the FBH headquarters right over it, and his massive corpse is locked up in the basement behind mana-reinforced glass, like a massive museum exhibit that would put T-Rexes to shame. They also found a massive rune stone, but since no mage types around were powerful enough to use it, it's just been sitting there gathering dust. And one of the surviving hunters, Thomas Andre, kept Kamish's sharpest fang, the same one that bit him, and he turned it into a sick-ass pair of daggers that he called Kamish's Wrath. It's the same dagger he gifted Jinwoo after their fight. But why was Kamish that strong? Well, in chapter 143, when Jinwoo finally met Kamish and successfully extracted his shadow, Buddy revealed he was actually a servant of Antares, the king of dragons and monarch of destruction. But during the big war with the rulers, Kamish got caught by the enemy, and they shoved an essence stone into his body, which is why he became possessed with the same voice that tells the other beasts to kill the humans. Kamish would have been a dope addition to the team, man, but Jinwoo was 8 years too late. Kamish's shadow went back to nothingness because too much time had passed since he died. He would have been a good boy though. I mean, look at how he wagged his tail. And finally, let's go back to the dungeon boss that started it all, Kandiaru, the architect. Nope, not that guy. This guy. Yup, the hidden boss of the double dungeon and moderator of the system was tablet-carrying statue all along. I was surprised too, kind of like how I was surprised when I found out that the dead person in the middle of the floor of the first Saw film was Jigsaw all along. Oops, spoilers. But back to solo leveling. Kandiaru took the form of a large stone statue of a hooded angel with 6 wings. And he posed as the one holding the guide on how to survive the Kartnon temple, just so he could watch the test takers fail their exams. But he had the same creepy smile like the god statue in the corner of the room, the one that killed almost everyone in the beginning. But how much of a pain in the ass is this boss? Well, he has full control over all statues inside the Kartnon temple. Yes, even the god statue as well. And after Jinwoo clapped all of those, Kandiaru jumped into action and beat Jinwoo black and blue, turning in 6 wings into arms that could use different weapons. But bro, he wasn't just strong, he was also smart. Brother built the entire system that turned Jinwoo into a player so that Ashbourne could eventually take Jinwoo's body and be reborn into the world. But he wasn't smart enough to predict how Ashbourne would hijack the system and allow Jinwoo to inherit his power and title, instead of taking over him entirely. And he lost access to the system too. Bro's account got banned like an aimbot cheater in Valorant. And when Ashbourne entrusted all his powers and his title to Jinwoo, he finally became an official monarch. But the question remains, is Sung Jinwoo actually the strongest monarch?